to my hunk kitchen. Today, I'm gonna show you how to make the perfect protein shake. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is put in a scoop of protein. Then you're gonna wanna add about a cup of almond milk. Then you're gonna add some protein.
Dethcube has been my favourite Sentinel since he released. There's just something that was really appealing to my 14-year-old brain about this tiny little cube strapped with a minigun that could just kill everything for me so I wouldn't have to do anything anymore, especially since I mostly played healer frames. I use Dethcube so much that this noise alone sets off my nostalgia completely. But over the years, he kind of fell into obscurity, especially after the release of Carrier back in the day, since Carrier was originally the only one that could use vacuum. When vacuum became universal, everyone quite naturally swapped to Helios, because Helios meant that you didn't have to scan anything yourself, and also with the detect vulnerability augment, it made Banshee even more relevant than she already is. And these days everyone just brings a Vulpa Filer with them. God knows why, to be honest. They don't do any damage, the only real convenience they bring is that they revive themselves. I mean, if you're gonna be lazy, at least whole arse it and just don't bring anything at all. I must have sunk about 15 former into Dethcube in total, including his weapon, in order to try and get him to some point of viability. For a time, I actually managed to achieve, but as the game updated, Dethcube was sort of left behind. Now don't get me wrong, you can still get Dethcube going. I've even got a Riven mod for my own, in order to try and get the Death Machine rifle to run any kind of serious damage. However, it does have some fundamental issues behind it. The Death Machine rifle doesn't really have good enough stats to be able to carry it to any higher level. It can take care of trash mobs around you, like butchers and stuff like that. But if you go up against anything that can deal actual damage, like a heavy gunner or a bombard, you might as well just not have a sentinel there. And then the Vaporize precept only does 600 damage in radiation and is only affected by base damage mods such as Serration, which means in order to buff out Vaporize properly, you're better off not using the Death Machine rifle. Since rifles and shotguns don't have many base damage mods that you can put on, you're better off using one of the various varieties of Burst Laser, since pistols have Hornet Strike, Magnum Force and Auger Pact, whereas obviously rifles only have Serration and Heavy Caliber, and shotguns only have Point Blank and Fisher's Spread. And if you're going to rely on a weapon that can only fire every 10 seconds, you better hope that that punch through actually pays off. What I'm saying is there are better options out there if you want a Sentinel that can actually do damage, like Carrier. It's just a shame he ended up getting an effective equivalent of ammo mutation. He's only really useful on weapons that are really ammo inefficient like the Gorgon. If only there was a build out there that relied almost solely on the Gorgon in order to function. So when it finally came to Dethcube Prime, I didn't even bother. I just got it, leveled it up, and then shelved it for quite a while. And then I took quite an interest in the Energy Generator precept. Now, Energy Generator is a special precept you can get for the Dethcube that comes from Cephalon Simaris for a 75,000 standing. This mod means that for every 10 assists that the Dethcube gets, you can generate 1 ball of energy, which obviously is pretty useful.
Now what I like to do, just for a little bit of taste, is add some protein.
But given that the Death Machine has such terrible target acquisition, it means that it's not really that useful, unless we can find a way to maximise the amount of targets that we're hitting. This is what after playing around for a little bit, I found the best weapon to use with Dethcube is actually the Helstrum. Because the Helstrum fires micro-missiles, and the micro-missiles have a blast radius, which means if you can hit one target in a group, and that blast radius can hit all of them, suddenly all of those targets count as an assist. And you don't even have to kill them yourself. If any of your allies kill those enemies, it still counts towards that energy generation. So what instead I did, is I got the Helstrum, and I modded that in order to fire off as many rounds as it could, as quickly as it could, not prioritising damage, and instead prioritising area of effect, using mods such as Fast Hands, Speed Trigger, Vile Acceleration, Shred. The only real mod that I put on that could actually be considered a damage mod was Rhyme Rounds, in order to get some extra cold procs in there, and Split Chamber in order to increase the amount of rounds it was actually firing off at once. The reason I've included Rhyme Rounds is because with those cold procs, if you hit that 48% chance of actually getting a status proc, that means that the enemies that you're hitting are going to be slowed, which is always beneficial. The biggest thing, though, is Firestorm. Since Firestorm increases the blast radius, that maximises the amount of targets that you're going to hit at once.
And then I usually throw in a whole banana. Then we're going to add some protein.
This means when it comes to the build for your Dethcube, you're going to want to focus on trying to keep it alive more than anything else. You want a precept on there that allows it to actually attack enemies in the first place, such as Swift Death or Assault Mode. However, these mods are completely interchangeable since they're exactly the same thing with a different name. Then I'd suggest putting on your standard Metal Fibre and Enhanced Vitality in order to buff out the health, Prime Regen, so you don't have to worry about it dying too many times. And then you've got your Energy Generator on there, and then you've got Synth Deconstruct. So in theory with this build, since it takes 10 enemies to generate an energy orb guaranteed, every 2 times you generate an energy orb, you're going to generate 5 health orbs as well, which means that this build effectively works as a replacement for Arcane Energize and Arcane Pulse. And since everyone seems to love to rely on Arcane Energize and Arcane Pulse, it makes for a pretty good replacement if you decide to play with your Arcanes a little bit more.
Now, while you guys weren't looking, I actually went back and added some protein.
My only real recommendation for this build is if you're going to use it, I suggest making your energy colour black, because otherwise the Helstrum's going to be firing off so many times and there's going to be so many particle effects you're going to send yourself bloody blind. Ultimately, with this build, if you can keep your Sentinel alive, you'll have an infinite fountain of health and energy in order to keep you alive as well.
And now you can finally add some protein and enjoy your beverage. I forgot the protein.
So that's all for today's video. I'll be back again in a longer period of time this time, since this one was quite a quick one to make. I don't really know how to end this, so I'm going to let my dog play it out. What have you got to say to the audience? Okay.